and welcome to Just One More Cookie, a podcast about two sisters' journeys toward complete health and wellness. We definitely don't have it all figured out, and we're still in the thick of it, but we are enjoying the ride. We'd love for you to come and join us for Just One More Cookie.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just One More Cookie. My name is Amy.
And I'm Abby.
And we're so excited for you to be here. And you know what? We're not even going to do preliminaries. We're just going to jump right into it. So Abigail is going to share her favorites this week. And I am loving the favorite because I have been a patron of this. So go ahead and share what your favorite is this week.
Sure. So this week I wanted to, because we've talked about food pretty much with our favorites, but this week I want to talk about exercise. So, my go-to exercise, I know that we've talked about this in the workout episode, and I have shared that I am not a fan of the gym. I just, I've worked at a gym before. It's not that big of a deal, but I feel like I get too distracted. And then I just, I feel like, not that I'm so much self-conscious, but I don't want to be gross and ugly and sweaty and jumping all around in front of other people. And then I don't want to be paying attention to what they're doing. So, and plus I feel like there's more flexibility for my schedule if I work out at home. So I've done several different exercises. I was a huge fan of Taebo way back in the day in the early 2000s.
Billy Blank's good stuff.
That's right. It was.
Yeah.
So, actually this happened. I got into doing this probably like 6 or 7 years ago. A friend of mine, she recommended the Nike training app. So I'd never done an app before. I'm like, okay, I'll try it out. So I'm not like I said, a gym person, but I'm also not a sit on the treadmill, do one thing for 20 minutes. So no matter what that is, like getting on the bike, the elliptical, the treadmill, any of that stuff. I can't do it. I can't stay motivated. I get really bored. So Nike training it's all interval training. So they do have some that are more low intensity, but they have a lot of the high intensity interval training. They have beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. They have anywhere from, I think the shortest, they have 6-minute workouts all the way up to 45 minutes. They actually just since COVID started, which a lot of workout platforms and other things had made premium things available for free. So now they have the premium access. So for those, it's actually a trainer-led, kind of like a live class, although it's not live. So you actually get to work out with a trainer. They have yoga, which I use their yoga a lot. So anyways, it's a really fun way to get your exercise in. I usually listen to a podcast, which, you can listen to Just One More Cookie. It'll make your workout go by really quickly, but something to change it up if you are a workout at home person, or even if you don't have time to get to the gym and you just want to do something quick. Go ahead and check it out. It is a free app. And like I said, now the premium access is free as well. So I really love it. So hopefully somebody else might find it beneficial.
Yeah, and I think the benefit is like everything that you're doing is timed. So it's like with the intervals, it's like you'll do one move for like a minute or 30 seconds. So it's like really quick. I found that when I do it. Now I'm a gym person. I don't care how ugly I look. I don't care how sweaty I look. I like being in the gym, but times when I haven't been able to, I've used the app, and it's a lot of, I don't want to say it is fun in the sense of moving my body, and not doing the same things like you said. So we're going to put a link to the app on the notes of this. If you're watching it on YouTube, it's in the show notes. And then if you are listening to it, it's going to be in the podcast description. So you can check it out. And it's a real simple download to your phone, and you can do it pretty much from anywhere. So good suggestion, Abigail.
Thank you.
Let's jump right into the topic, because I think that this is such a relevant topic for so many people. Not just from a health standpoint, but from a life standpoint and a stressor standpoint. We always talk about that health is multifunctional, multidimensional. But this week we're talking about just say no. I remember, now I was too young, but just from historically with being a part of the DARE program when we were in elementary school, which was drug abuse resistance education.
Good
But
for you. I didn't remember what the
I know.
acronym stood for.
Yeah, and they used to play this song at the beginning, Dare to Keep a Kid Off Drugs.
I remember that song.
Yeah, and it had like a hit beat to it, so we were always like, "Can you please play the Dare song?" Because it was like it felt so cool. But anyways, like the phrase was "just say no," right? And I remember, I guess Nancy Reagan was the first one that like made the campaign of it, and people made fun of her because it was like, "Oh, to combat drugs, you just say no," which sounds so simple, right? Um, but in reality, no is a very powerful word. Even though it seems so simple, it is an extremely powerful word if you know how to use it and you know how to use it well. But unfortunately, so many, especially myself, this can be a very difficult word. Now, I have talked a lot about the fact that I have been a lifelong struggler of the people pleasing syndrome. I faced a lot of issues because of it, but one of the main things is that it has been historically, and I want to say currently it's not as much of a struggle, but historically it used to be a really huge struggle for me. And there's been so many examples in my life where the culmination of all the things I had gotten myself into led me into this like mental, emotional, physical crash. But I remember one specific time I was teaching full time and I had 9th and 10th graders. So that was 2 separate classes I had to prep for. And, you know, teaching is all encompassing. And I was waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and I would go and I would teach and school would be over at 3. And I remember one time I was at a faculty meeting and they were like, "Oh, we're looking for an after school administrator." I don't know what an after school administrator does, but in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So then I go and ask, like, you know, what does this entail? And the vice principal was like, "Oh, you would be perfect for this. Yes. Oh, we need you." And those are the key words, right? We need you. Oh, you need me. Well, of course you need me. Well, now, of course, I had to say yes because you need me. And if I say no, I'm leaving you in your time of need. So then I take on the after school after school coordinator position. And that meant I was at school until like 5, sometimes 6 o'clock every day. And then I was asked to be the sophomore sponsor. I don't know what that is, but they were like, "We thought of you first." "Oh, you thought of me first?" Of course. Yes. You know, because it's like, I felt like they were complimenting me. And then it's like, but if I say no, then you're going to think that I'm lazy or, you know, and I always felt in my mind, there's time. And then in addition to that, I was so heavily involved in the church that I was going to, and it was just a very active church. So I was doing all of these things, and then I'm helping with the youth because of course I had to help with the youth because I'm a teacher. How irresponsible of me to be helping at the school and not help at the church. So now I'm helping with the youth, and then I'm teaching Bible studies because of course that's a part of being in the church. I teach Bible studies. It was like every part of my day had to be accounted for. And I found myself getting deeper and deeper in this muck of responsibility because every time someone would ask me something, it was like they would begin it by saying, we thought of you first, or "You're just so talented and you just have all these gifts and we need you." And then on top of that, like just always wanting to get involved, always being active, and then getting to the point where it was like, I was never home. My house was a disgusting mess. I never sat on my couches. I had these beautiful like a couch and love seat. Never even I would never sit on them. I was never home. And it was like my life became encompassed by everybody else. Everybody else's needs, everybody else's programs, everybody else, you know, like even from a teacher standpoint, it was about everybody else all day long. And I felt like I couldn't stop the train. And then the minute that I would let go of one commitment, I would feel bad because I'm like, "Oh, I have all this extra time." So then I would just look for other opportunities to fill in my time. I just never knew how to say, "No, thank you." And it caused a lot of issues.
Yeah. I don't really have, well, I usually don't have as much trouble saying no. And I think part of that has to do with my personality type. And a lot of times it has been a knee-jerk reaction where people say, well, do you want to do this? No, I don't want to do it. And so and I really don't, in a lot of instances, I really don't succumb to peer pressure very much. I mean, it's just I don't have an issue with that a lot of times. So, but one thing I have noticed is sometimes I struggle saying no to social obligations. And it's on the flip side, I need to say yes to some social obligations because obviously social interaction is very important. We talked about it for, our stress episode, and there's so many things that are beneficial to being involved with social situations, relationships, all that. But at the same time, I am social at work all day long. And it is very exhausting for me. So, my introverted self, when I get home, I need that alone time and I need to be by myself with my own thoughts in my brain, relaxing and decompressing. And sometimes I will overcommit myself just because I think anytime that anybody asks me, are you going to come to this party? Are you going to do this? Do you want to come and hang out? And, sometimes I don't regret it. I'll say yes and I'll go and I'll have a really great time. But then other times I'll go out of a feeling of obligation, or I'm just like, well, yeah, I probably should. And then not that I usually have a bad time. It's just, I think I am really exhausted from this. And I really just wish I would have stayed home because I really needed that time to recharge and I didn't take it.
Well, I think for you, this is something I've noticed, and maybe other people can relate from the standpoint of like personally, like if you're comfortable with a person, like on a personal relationship, it's easier to say no. But sometimes when it comes to professionally, it can be difficult to say no, especially like if it's your boss who's trying to put on extra responsibility for you or, giving you praise and then saying, oh, and we want you to do this, this, and this. And in those instances, because you are an authority pleaser, in my opinion,
I agree with you. Yes,
yeah, it can be more difficult because I think sometimes that is the struggle. Because I mean, like when it comes to but for me, like even when it comes to family members, like I feel like I need to say yes, not so much because I'm like people pleasing, but it's like responsibility. Like I need to. But even from a health standpoint, there's a lot of times when I'm saying yes, even though I need to say no. And a lot of that has to do with like food choices. And I find myself saying yes when I'm very vulnerable, like if I'm tired or if I'm just sick of it, like I'm not getting the results I want. Like it's easier for me to make trips to my bakery when I'm like just having moments and like I can make excuses for myself, or I can go a little bit off my meal plan because I'm sick of eating broccoli and ground turkey, So it's like in those moments too, like I find it even difficult to tell myself no. It's not even just about telling other people no. Sometimes we struggle just telling ourselves no and like just saying no and meaning no without saying, okay, how do I get around this no? How do I negotiate this?
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to food, I feel like I don't struggle with saying no to others. I struggle with saying no to myself. So I feel like I've really kind of almost conditioned myself. It's almost a knee-jerk reaction. I don't even acknowledge it or think about it. Like I've had, work is a prime example of people offering you food because, it happens all the time. People are bringing in baked goods, or they're like, I made too much of this. I brought it, help yourself. Or I brought donuts today. I brought bagels, we're going to order pizza. It's like, there's always an opportunity. Or, Halloween is coming up. Oh, my kids brought all this candy. I don't want them eating this candy. I don't want it in my house. So then you bring it to everybody else and let them get diabetes. Okay. So I just got to the point where I immediately, as soon as they say it, I don't even process it in my brain. Do you want some of that? Oh, no, thanks. I'm good. Automatically, to the point where I've caught myself when people will ask me for things that are good, Like somebody had brought in like homegrown cucumbers, delicious. And somebody asked me like, "Oh, do you want some of this cucumber?" And I had to stop myself because I was almost going to say, "Oh, no, I'm good." And I thought, wait, I like cucumbers and they're healthy. It's like, yes, please. Thank you. I'll take some. But I feel like in the food world, it's easier to, at least for me, just out of practice, I've made it a practice. I struggle in the area of telling myself no when I'm stressed out or when I get home from a very terrible day or when I go to my mom's house and she has these really delicious Ghirardelli chocolate squares, dark chocolate with sea salt caramel in them. Oh man, those are so good. And when they're calling my name, I have a really difficult time saying, no, you can't.
Yeah, that's so true.
Mhm.
And I feel like in so many situations there's a number of reasons why we struggle saying no. And the first one I've kind of already covered. It's for those of us who are people pleasers. And the way that others view us is very important. And for years, that drove so many of my decisions was this idea of I wanted people to see me as smart. I wanted them to see me as somebody that they can depend on, that I was a hard worker, that I was talented. And I felt like I could showcase that with whatever I was asked to do. So even I would take on things that were totally outside of my strengths or even things that I wanted to do. It was like if somebody told me, we think you would be good at this, even if in my head I'm like, no, I wouldn't. I would think, oh, they know better because they see something I don't see. So I'll just say yes. And then it's like, the idea of even from a personal standpoint, if a friend is asking me to do something or if a friend has a need, it's like, well, who am I to say no? If I say no, they're going to think I'm a bad friend or a bad person. So it's like that fear of people seeing me in a negative light makes me say yes more than no. And I think so many people struggle with this. It's like all we have is our physical image. That's what we believe. Like, and people will like us the more yeses we say, and the no's that we say, people will think we're lazy or that we're ungrateful or we're just mean people, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another thing that a lot of people struggle with, and I don't really have this issue too much, but sometimes we surround ourselves either on purpose or just by happenstance. We surround ourselves with people that are leeches of our time, our resources, our energy. And those type of people, I feel like some of them can be very manipulative and they've learned how to get you to say yes, whether it's by flattery or guilt tripping or, they just need constantly and you feel bad and you think, well, I love them. I should go out of my way to help them. So I think that can be a real struggle for people. Like I said, I'm very lucky that I don't have, especially my friendships, I don't have leeches. Sometimes it's difficult at work. I don't say I would have leeches at work, but I do have people sometimes that will, and that you have that at every job. And a lot of people do it at one point or another where you push stuff off onto other people because you're too busy or your workload is too stressed or whatever. But I think sometimes it's hard for us to stand up for ourselves and say, look, I don't have time to do this. This is not something that is in my job. If I did have the resources or the time, I would gladly help you, but I can't. I cannot make this a priority. So, but I know that that is a really difficult struggle. Like you said, especially if it's somebody that's in a position of authority over you, it becomes very difficult if you don't practice and if you don't, learn how to do it and say it respectfully. And, you can't just say, I'm not doing that. That's not my job. Boss, I'm not going to do what you tell me. But I mean, being able to set those boundaries, sometimes it's difficult. So if you have those kind of people in your life, whether friendships, professional relationships, people that take and take and take, it can be very difficult to say no to those people.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can attract those type of people without even realizing it. I know that there was a time in my life when I attracted a lot of very, very needy people. And there's nothing wrong with people who are essentially needy, but I feel like there needs to be that give and take in the relationship. But when you start taking stock of your relationships personally and professionally and realize that everyone in my life really enjoys taking, but when it comes time that I need, they are absent, or they're not willing to even give at the level that I'm giving. It creates like an imbalance, right? And then it does become like you are this open, like whatever you need, I'm the host, just suck the life out of me, and it's not fair to you. And that goes on with our next one, is that can continue to go on because we don't have boundaries. It's just whatever people want, they can take. And I remember when I first moved down here and I was a personal assistant to a father-son entrepreneur duo. And I was a terrible personal assistant. Let me first say that. I was not created.
I would be an amazing personal assistant.
You would.
No one could pay me enough to do it, but let me tell you. Although, if anybody's in the market for a personal assistant, I mean, if you make it worth my while, I would change your life. I would do amazing.
It's not worth it. I'm going to tell you right now. These people are underpaid. It's not worth it. But this is the thing that I didn't like about that environment. And it's not to say anything about either of them. It was a life in which I had to live completely without boundaries. And it showed me how much my personal life mirrored this professional life. Because it was at any time of the day. It was 1:00 in the morning when they were up working, sending me like 55 emails that were like my notifications are going off. It was calling me at 6 a.m. telling me that you need bacon from Whole Foods. It was like, and it was a specific type of bacon. And I had to go across the bridge for 30 minutes. It was go to our house and fold our clothes, part of which is underwear.
No.
And I'm like, I'm just like, I was just...
Let me just say, I want to amend my previous statement.
Take it back.
No, there are certain things that are off the table. Just so you know, my future employer, I will be your personal assistant, but there will be some rules.
But that's what it came to, and I couldn't say no because there was really no job description. It like a personal assistant is like anything I want, you shall get. If they're sitting there and like, we're hungry for Chipotle, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what what's on my to-do list. I have to get up and go get them Chipotle. And then everybody has separate orders. And then someone has vegan. And I'm getting so mad because I'm like, get your own stuff. But that's kind of it. It shined a light so much on like my personal life because I was like, this is exhausting. But then it's like I would leave my professional life, and that's how it was in my personal life. Friends could call me at any time, ask me for anything, and it's like, oh yeah, I know Amy's going to do this. I know it because I didn't say no. So it's like whatever you need. And then it's because I don't have boundaries, I'm resenting you. Well, how can I resent you? I gave you that access. Same way that with this entrepreneur duo, I can't resent them. Because that's what I was hired to do, even though if that had been put in writing, I wouldn't have taken the job. But neither here nor there.
Yeah. I also think, too, that one thing that really keeps us from saying no is that we equate our worth with what we do. So I do struggle with this a little bit, or I guess I should say that I identify with this. I fit well into the position that I have been hired into. So I do my job very well. And because of that, a lot of people really rely on me, and I have taken on more responsibilities. And I especially, like a lot of my clients, I have a very strong relationship with them. I've known them for several years, so I built a level of trust with them. They know my work ethic. And because of that, sometimes they will ask things of me. And a lot of times I'm able to juggle it, and I'm able to pull things together. But I think it makes me feel good that these people do depend on me and that they can trust me. And I know that if I were to ask them for a recommendation, I know that they would give me a stellar recommendation. So I think a lot of times we do, because we, especially if we're very motivated, or maybe even perfectionism, anything, if we're doing something well and we're getting the accolades, or we're getting appreciation, or we're getting any kind of recognition for that, it makes us feel good. So we want to say yes in that case.
Yeah. I think another thing, connected to that is that it really does feel good to be needed. Like I said before, that's like the magic word for me, right? Like anyone that would ever call me and say, we would like you to help with this, it would be this idea of, we really need you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm needed. That feels so good. It's like why a lot of parents maybe struggle when their kids start becoming more independent or even leave, because there's an element of not feeling needed anymore. It's kind of like a two-edged sword, right? Because it's like, it feels good to be needed, but then sometimes you resent the people that need you because you're like, okay, I like being needed, but not this much. Back off, But I think that feeling of somebody needs me. And then this is the thing we tell ourselves. If I don't do it, then what's going to happen? It will crumble. This whole thing,
Sometimes it does.
If I don't take over as after school administrator, these children will crumble into a life of crime. Now, 50% probably did. That's what the statistics tell us. But the other 50 were saved. That's, like in my mind, that's as heavy as it is, right? Mm-hmm. And like when I started seeing that, even like helping people, right? Like I've had needy friends, and in my mind, I'm like, but if no one picks them up from work, what will happen? In my mind, I'm thinking that even though Uber is available, you can catch a bus, like get a taxi. But in my mind, I'm like, they'll be stranded, and then they'll have to walk, and then someone will mug them. So it's like this idea of like being needed feels good.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think too, sometimes we can tend to feel guilty, or we have people that can make us feel guilty. So, yeah, I will throw her under the bus, but my mother is classic for this. And Mom, I love your guts, but you are such a guilt tripper. She is for sure. She knows the way to get us to say yes. And I mean, to be fair,
to get you to say yes.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, she says yes all the time to us. Yeah. She is very giving and very loving. So, she does guilt trip us, but at the same time, she has every right to guilt trip us. And I know you are notorious for trying to guilt me into doing things, although you very rarely have luck with it at all.
Well, it's like a losing battle. I think I really tried when I was younger and tried the tears or like come ons and the trying to convince you. But I've identified people in my life that are like pretty solid with their no. So now it's like if I ask you to do something, it's something that I think that you might say yes to. Mm-hmm. And if you say no, I just walk away from it. Like there's just no point. But you
still are pretty good. There's certain times and certain things that you're good at guilt tripping. And sometimes you will get me to say yes. But yeah, I dig my heels in pretty hard sometimes.
Yeah. So this leads me to the next one, which is we give into peer pressure only because this totally connects with you. Now, I'm like, if everybody's doing it, yeah, definitely. We should do it. There's no way I'm saying no. If the majority of us are doing it, of course, why wouldn't I? I don't want to be the odd man out, Like if everybody's the one who's committing to this, if everybody's the one I'm going to go ahead and go along with the crowd, I think that's the power of like peer pressure. But I remember as kids, like, I remember one time we rented a rated R movie and that was not allowed in our house. No, and I remember we snuck it and we were going to watch it, and it was us and a couple of friends. And I remember you were like, I'm not going to watch this. And we were trying to convince you. You're like, it's not that big of a deal. Just do it. And you're like, no, I'm not. We are not supposed. And you're very much rule follower. And I'm just like, what rules? So they were like, come on, Abigail, come on. And you were like, no. And you went in your room and slammed the door.
I didn't slam the door. I just went upstairs. I'm like, I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah. I think so for some people, this is more of it, like peer pressure is more of an issue than others. Mm-hmm. And I think it depends a lot on personality, because I'm a people person. I want to make people happy. And sometimes no makes people sad. So I'm like, no, you want to do this? And there's more than one of you? Of course.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Right. And with that, I think it just comes with practice. Because like you said, it's easier for me to say no because I think that's part of my personality. But a lot of it is You just have to, it's just practice. But I know it is difficult to do that because a lot of times saying yes is easier than saying no. And it can feel better than saying no, especially if you are fitting in, trying to fit in with your peers, or you are trying to please other people, your friends, your coworkers, your people that are in a position of authority over you. It just feels better to say it. And sometimes it's easier because you don't get that resistance. You don't have somebody saying, come on, why not? And then it's just, you feel like, I don't want to have to justify myself and saying, no, I'll just say yes, just shut them up. I think a lot of times, sometimes it's just easier to do it.
Yeah. I think too, a lot of times I don't think we know what we really want or what we really value in our lives. And when that's the case, especially when we don't know the value of ourselves, when we don't know the value of ourselves, yes becomes very easy. Like if I understood the value of what I offer, the value of my time, the value of my intellect, the value of my leadership, when I understand that, I say yes very carefully because I understand what I'm bringing to the table. And I know if I say yes to everyone, that depletes the genius, that depletes my ability to offer any sort of value in those environments, right? So it's like, if I'm saying yes to everything at school, then in each one of those environments, I'm giving less of myself. So I'm not even cherishing the value of who I am, let alone just cherishing the value of who I am as a person outside of what I can do.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think a lot of times we also say yes to avoid conflict. So I have a story that I could share, even though I didn't say yes in this situation. So this was, maybe this will bring up old wounds, but I remember it was me and you and Drea, and it was Black Friday. This was a long, long time ago. So I remember we stayed up and we went to the Lighthouse Mall. And it took us forever to get in. It was packed. Not all the stores were opened. And then a lot of them you had to wait in super long lines. The deals were not that great. And so we stayed out, I think it was 4 a.m. And so I remember we were at Drea's apartment and I was pretty much done for the night. I had stayed up. And as many of you know who know me personally, if I am sleep deprived, I do not function well. So I was about ready to shut down. And I remember you and Drea wanted to go to the mall, I think. And you're like, okay, I want to go to the mall. I said, I'm not going. Please, Abigail, come on. Just go to the mall. It's not going to be that hard. And I was at the point, I was at a hard stop. I said, no, I'm not going. And I wasn't telling you guys that you could not go. I was saying, I don't care what you're doing. I am not going to that mall. I will not leave this spot. I will die on this spot before I go to the mall. But anybody in a lesser situation, and honestly, if I had been fully rested, I might not have fought so hard because it would have been easier just to shut you guys up because you were badgering me. Please, why are you being like that, Abigail? Just come on, just go. But a lot of times, like I said, it's easier. Then you don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to fight with somebody because they really want you to say yes. So sometimes it's just easier you don't want to fight about it. You don't want to have conflict. You don't want to stand up for yourself. So you just say yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think when you start to create a reputation of being somebody that says a hard no and a hard yes, then people don't bring as much conflict because as we've aged, if you say no, I'm about to walk out of the room. Conversation over. I'm not tiring myself. I remember I think Drea was ready to go to the wall with you. And I'm just sitting there like, I was there like, I don't care. She's not going to say yes.
No, that was very early in our friendship before she understood. She doesn't bother anymore.
Like, let this go. She's not saying yes. But yeah, I think I think that becomes the benefit, which we'll talk about in a minute. When I was looking up the power of no, it's so funny how much research this is when it comes to neuroscience in our brain. But one of the things that I saw was that there was this study done by a Harvard behavioral scientist and a Princeton economist, and they were doing this study on why we don't say no. And one of the things that they found was that the busier that we get, the harder time we have saying no to more commitments, which sounds so counterintuitive, right? Like, of course, the more that I put on my plate, then the easier it is going to say no. But they found the opposite is true, is that the more that you put on your plate, the harder it becomes to say no, because it's like, well, I'm already doing 10 things. What's 11? You know?
Another thing that I think also can affect us and keep us from saying no is sometimes we fear rejection. So, like I said, a lot of times it does feel, or like we both said, it feels good to say yes because, people put their faith in us, their confidence in us. We equate our worth with what we do. So sometimes we might think, well, if I say no, somebody's going to be disappointed in me, or, why not? What's wrong with you? You really just let me down. I really was counting on you and you said no. So I think it's that fear of somebody rejecting us because we say no, and that can keep us from saying no when we need to.
Yeah. And here's what the science says so much, like I said, about the power of no. And one of the things that I saw, this was in Psychology Today, and I thought it was such a powerful statement. It said that the word no is more than just a 2-letter word, that there's so much behind it, because a no is essentially communicating to somebody that this is who I am, this is what I value, this is what I will and will not do, and this is how I'm going to choose to act, without apology. You know what I mean? And I think at the same time, you don't just want to be saying no to everything and be aloof and rude, because, you still want to connect to other people. You still want to help other people. We're not saying like shut this down and say no to everything. But that's one thing that I've always admired about you, Ab, is that like even as kids, like you didn't care what other people thought. Like I've never seen you like buckle under peer pressure, because your no was always connected to, I know who I am. I know what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And I'm not going to move and compromise based on somebody else's opinion of me or based on somebody else's needs. While I take into consideration somebody else's needs, I put my needs at the center, because I know if I put my needs at the center, then everybody else's needs will get met. But if it's all about everybody else, I lose myself in the process. Another thing that that the science says is that the no that we direct at ourselves becomes like our self-governor, right? So the no that you're saying to yourself is creating boundaries. If we're always saying yes, if I'm always saying yes to Valhalla Bakery, if I'm always saying yes to the treats, if I'm always saying yes to the cheat days, if I'm always saying yes to, I just want to rest today and I don't want to work, my self-governor becomes really weak. Right? So then once again, I don't even have boundaries with myself. So your no to yourself is just as important as your no to other people, because that's your self-governor. That's what keeps you disciplined. That's what keeps you balanced. And here's where a lot of the pain comes in when it comes to saying no. Neuroscience shows that when you say no, a negative response happens in your brain, because biologically and chemically, yes feels better than no. So a lot of times, even if the no is like a positive thing, right? Just saying the word no has a history of negative patterns in our lives, right? Like even when you're a kid, the worst thing you can hear from your parents is no. Mm-hmm. Like, Mom, can they spend the night? No. I remember so many tears being cried over the answer to that question.
Well, even if you hear it, or if you say it to your parents, I mean, you're conditioned. Yeah. Go do that. No. What?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Yeah. Did that you just tell me no?
That just gave me PTSD. No. Yeah. So it's like, because those memories are sometimes attached to like negative moments, we carry that with us. So even they were doing like brain mapping, and they were talking about how when you say yes, there is a positive response in your brain. And when you say no, there's a negative response in the brain. And the only way to break that is to start to change your relationship with no and change the way you feel about no. So we're going to go into some things that you can start doing, just like practical things that you can implement into your life that are going to help you say no more when you should.
Yes. And the first one, which I've been spouting since the beginning, is practice makes perfect. And like I said, it's very difficult in the beginning, especially if you're somebody like you, Amy, who is a people pleaser and who is so used to saying yes and enjoys saying yes. For you to start saying no is very difficult. And I think it's just baby steps along the way. And once you start doing it, it becomes easier. Just like with anything, when you're starting on your health journey, when you're doing workouts, when you're doing meal planning, when you are, trying to make healthier choices, when you're working on your sleep habits, anything that you do and you do in repetition becomes easier and easier because you don't have to think about it. It's just an automatic response. So I think that don't beat yourself up if you say yes and you should have said no. Just think, okay, in the future, I need to learn from this. And next time I'm going to say no. And then it becomes easier and easier. So that way, when somebody brings donuts and somebody asks you, do you want donuts? Which, by the way, somebody got Rise and Roll donuts, and apparently they're supposed to be amazing. I still have not had one. And so I'm telling you, I felt like they were going to try to shove it down my mouth. They're like, eat this. You had to eat it. Like, these are the best donuts you've ever had. And honestly, if I was like, if it was just me, I told you I have a harder time saying no to myself. But at work, I've already created these boundaries that I said, no, I'm not going to eat that. I don't care what you say. And so I think it's just that process of I've gotten so used to it. It is my pattern. It is my habit. So start doing it and make it a habit. Make it a conscious thought that I am going to start doing it. And the more you do it, the less effort you have to put into it, less conscious effort you have to put into it.
Yeah. And when you're thinking of saying no, it doesn't have to just be like a no. You know what I mean?
Right. And I don't do it like that. Although
you do that
some people I have to do that at some point. But other people, of course, because they're just trying to be polite. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we struggle with it too. Like with me, the people at work, although some of them are they're trying to strong arm me, like just eat it. They're trying to negative peer pressure me. But a lot of them, it's just they're being nice. They bought something because they wanted to treat everybody. So of course you want to say nice or say no in a nice and respectful way. So, thanks. I'm trying to watch and, be more disciplined and.
Yeah. And the level that you explain is totally up to you. And it's going to depend on relationship, the way that you say no. But I think sometimes that's the fear. Like, well, I'm just going to have to say no. No. Well, you can word it in such a way. I remember when I used to teach at a lockdown facility for troubled youth. Right. And they were, it's interesting because they had gone through like a really difficult time in their life. And I found that the people in this facility were like placating to these kids. Right. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, you had a difficult life, but you can't be an awful human and you can't be like a spoiled brat. And we're just going to say yes, because you had an awful life. Like, welcome to the world.
Right.
So I remember one day I never had issues saying no to them, but it was like, they would always be asking me questions all day, just stuff they knew I was going to say no to. So one day I was like, today is the day of no. And I am dedicating it to no because I appreciate the power of it. So I will be saying no 90% of the day. And I will also be tallying my no's because it's a competition with myself. And they were so upset. They were like, why would you say that? And I was like, I don't care. No. So then it was like they were trying to challenge me with it, right? Like just inappropriate stuff. But then it kind of became a game because I was like, get used to hearing the word no and be okay with it. Because that was the thing. Mm-hmm. The minute I would say no, it's like when you say it to a kid, right? Meltdown. Mm-hmm. And they want to discuss it. And they want, listen, today is no. We're dedicating it to no. So I've said this to you, and I know that you want to get emotional and you maybe want to bring some tears. Does nothing to me. You might want to bring your case before me, but because no is welcome here today, sit down, and that's 5. So then I would like tally it. But I think it's like it warrants hearing it come out of our own mouth is something that it's like it needs to be comfortable rolling off of our tongue. That's as much as we need to practice it. You know, like put yourself in position sometimes to say no. And most importantly, and you mentioned this already, is setting your boundaries. Know where your boundaries are. When I was on the praise team, I remember we would have all this extra stuff. And I remember one time they were like, this Saturday we are driving down to Nashville to sing. And the praise team leader called me and she was like, oh, so what time will you be meeting us? I was like, I will not be in attendance. And it was like a huge ordeal. Well, why will you not be in attendance? I said, I'm setting boundaries and I'm not doing anything on weekends, on Saturdays. And if that is a requirement, I'm going to have to step down. And it became a huge thing. And she was like, well, the pastor's going to have to call you. I was like, that's fine. Do you need my phone number? I can text it to you. Because I didn't at that point. And this is as solid as you need to be. I'm not. If a person gets offended by my boundaries, that's because I've given them way too much access. And people that won't respect your boundaries and people that constantly push your boundaries or make you feel guilty because of it, that might be a moment where you need to reassess the value and how close you need to be in that relationship. Because when I got the call, I said the same thing. Why won't you be attending? Sir, I refuse to give up another one of my weekends. I'm already giving up 4 days a week to do church things. And I'm unwilling to give up my Saturday. I work Monday through Friday. Sunday is a work day. So I won't. And I got a lot of pushback and I eventually had to step down and I was fine with that. But it felt so empowering, even from the standpoint of I respect these people, but I can respect you and still draw boundaries and still say a solid yes and a solid no, because I know what I'm willing to give you and then what I'm unwilling to give you.
Yeah. And I like what you said about solid yes and solid no. And I think that's another thing when we are communicating these boundaries is to make sure that your yes and your no are solid. Because if you are in that wishy-washy, like, no, I don't think so, you put yourself in a position where, people can manipulate you or they can pressure you because it's often to their benefit for you to say yes. So in those instances, you want to make sure that you are being firm with your no and you are sticking up for your boundaries and saying no means no. There is no in between. There's no shades of gray. It's a black or white, yes or no. Everything is clear cut.
Yeah. And then you get rid of a lot of the negotiation when you do that, which I think is really important. And then I also think it's important that you separate your worth from what you do and find worth in just who you are. If the people in your life cannot call upon you at all hours of the night to do things for them, you should still have people in your life that love you for you, right? But, and this is something that I found that was actually really a great experience for me. When I started to really draw boundaries and I started really to put some parameters on my life and my time, I found that people that used to be really close to me or used to praise me and come to me all the time and say all the right things. We need you. You're so great. You're so smart. When I started to draw boundaries, I found that they backed away from me. And initially that would have made me panic, oh no, I have to convince them that I'm great. But what I realized is that when I took the value of who I was out of what I can do and just the value of just being Amy, that I'm valuable, that then the people that were around me started to mimic that. And they value me for me and not just for what I can do for them and not just for my yeses, that I can say no to these people. And they're like, okay, I have a friend, if she wants to go out on a Friday night and I'm like, man, I would love to, but I'm really tired. And I think I just need a mental health day. She's not going to be on the other side of that text messaging me and saying, begging me to do it. Or thinking I'm a bad friend. She'll just text me and say, you do you. Yes, you need rest. You're a hard worker. Yes, she's right. That's the value of valuing me, because then I'm teaching the other people around me to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, that friend is a really good example is you want to surround yourself by people who, first of all, respect your yes and your no. And second of all, people that are givers and not leeches. So you want to find a balance because, of course, friendships, really good friendships, you need each other. That's a strong relationship. So, but you want somebody that when you need something, they're willing to give in return. So, I have a lot of, I have a very small group of friends that are really close. I've got a lot of acquaintances and I have a lot of really good friendly people that I would classify as friends. And then I have a small group of people that are really close to me, really tight-knit friends. And I know that they can come to me and they can just unload with all of their word vomit for everything that's going on, and then just, I need you to be there for me. I need you to listen to me. And I need you to focus all your energy on me right now because I am really having a stressful time, or this happened or this happened. But by the same token, when I am having those days and I need to unload on them and I need to vent and I am having just a terrible, awful day, those people are there for me and they are there to listen to whatever I say. And they're not there to say, well, you had a really hard day. Listen to what happened at my day. So I think you need to surround yourself and look for people that are willing to give as much as they need to take from you. And then you have that balance and then you can say yes to them. You can help them, but then they also will say yes to you and they also will be a help to you.
Yeah. And I think too, as we were talking about like having your yes and no be very succinct, I think at the same time, like sometimes it does warrant giving some form of why. Like I said, like you don't have to say no because this and this and this, and definitely don't say no and then start lying. There's like, like some people who really struggle saying no. So they're like, no. And then out comes like this really long lie that you're going to probably get yourself in trouble with,
Sometimes that's easy though. Like, you want to come to this party? Well,
right,
no.
Now I'm incredibly busy.
Right. I have to go out of town, which really means that you're going to your mom's house who lives 15 minutes away. Well, technically it's out of town.
We used to do that to get out of football games when we were in band. Do you remember that? Like, no, we're going out of town. Technically, oh man, my microphone fell. Technically, we're going to Crown Point, so that's out of town because we live in Maryville.
Stayed the night at our grandma's house, and she lived in Cherville, and we lived in Maryville. So
yeah,
it was 15 minutes away. It was out of town. That probably was very unethical and not very good of us.
Well, Mom wrote the letter, so it doesn't matter. But I think like when it comes to like saying your why, like for instance, if people at work keep offering you like unhealthy food options, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's easier. Like I've had this conversation a lot. If people are like offering me, like I have a friend and if I'm having a rough day, I'll be like, man, today's rough. And he'll be like, all right, let's get in the car and go to Valhalla. And I'm like, are you trying to destroy me as a friend? But I've communicated to him. I'll tell him like, no, I can't. I have health goals. And because I have health goals, I know that I want that, but I'm not going to get it. And the conversation ends there. It's not like we go back and forth and him like making fun of my health goals. And if he did, that would not be somebody that I would spend the majority of my time with, right? Or like if somebody wants to hang out, instead of me saying, no, I don't want to, which might be the case, I'll say something like, no, like I've kind of overscheduled my week and I really want to take time for myself. That's always valid because taking time for myself is like maybe just sitting in my bed watching Netflix, So it's like you can give a why that doesn't make you seem so aloof and secretive. Like there's nothing worse than someone that tries to make their life seem like it's like a James Bond movie. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm meeting secretly and you can never know. Like, I don't care to know, like everything you do doesn't have to be top secret. Right. But you don't have to like word vomit everything, but have like a solid why, especially someone who's like consistently needy. Then it's like, listen, this is why I'm saying no to this. I don't want to talk about it again.
Mm-hmm. Right. And one thing else you might want to try is the 10-second rule, which I actually would take longer than this, me personally. But if somebody asks you a yes or no, doesn't mean you automatically have to answer right away. You don't have to have a firm commitment come out of your mouth as soon as they ask. So sometimes it's better to just say, I'm not really sure yet how my week is looking. Can I get back to you? And then really evaluate, because I really wish that I had done that with some of the social commitments that I had made. And I wish that I had waited and said, let me get back to you, because if I had waited, I would have gone through a really dreadful work week where I thought I was going to die. And I came home every night with a headache. I was mentally and physically exhausted. And then I would have called or said, you know what? I really can't make it. I'm sorry. But because I had committed, I thought, well, now I got to go. So I think there is value in waiting, because if they need the answer right now, again, boundaries. I'm sorry. You might want an answer right this second, but I'm not willing to give you that. And I'm not able to give you that. So let me get back to you. And a lot of times you'll find if you just say that, I'm not really sure yet. Let me look into it. I'll get back to you. People are willing to accept that answer, and they are willing to wait. And then you can give a more informed yes or no.
Yeah. And even just saying something like, let me check my calendar. Now, I know that I've said this to people before and they get offended, and that's fine. You can get offended. Like, oh, you have to put me in your calendar? Yeah. Yeah, I do. Because you can't just have control of you don't have me on call, Right. So, I think just saying something like, well, let me check my calendar, let me check my other commitments, can really help you enter situations well-informed. So then you're okay with it. Even social situations, like you said, like we're busy, but we know that we need to be more community-based, right? That's important. Mm-hmm. So if you're saying something like, let me check, when you go in to say yes, you won't later resent it, because you're like, okay, I looked, I made sure. Now I know I'm going to go, as opposed to just jumping in with the yes. And then you look after you say yes, you're like, I don't even want to go. I don't know why I did this.
Yep.
Another thing you can do is identify the people in your life that maybe are better with setting boundaries and saying no, and call them when you're feeling tempted or when you're feeling overwhelmed. I know, like, Abigail is a personal inspiration of mine as a no sayer, because
yeah, reach out to me if you're struggling. I will give you some tips on how to say no.
Yeah, and the majority of the time, it's like when I'm talking to you or I'm talking to my mom, it's like the majority of it's, you just say yes too much, Amy. Just say no. And of course, right, we'll go back to Nancy Reagan, like, just say no. And we all laugh at her like, well, that sounds dumb. I didn't need you to get on a podium and create a campaign. But she does, because we don't say no. And that is as simple as it is. Like, how do I get out of this mess? How do I stop feeling so overwhelmed? How do I stop doing these 110 commitments? Well, just say no.
Right. And I think we also need to, at the very end of it all, we just need to remind ourselves of our worth. So what we are worth is not what we can do for others. It comes from who we are, the core of who we are. And remind ourselves of our goals. We have set goals for ourselves that we want to accomplish, and our value and our worth determines that we are worthy of accomplishing these goals. We're worthy of the reward that comes from the accomplishment. And we need to remind ourselves, we made promises to ourselves. And I think that the commitments that you make to yourself are so important, even more so than the commitments that you make to others. So, because I really think that it's very important to be true to yourself, to be faithful to the priorities and the goals that you put into place. I think sometimes we just need that reminder, and maybe you need to write it down and say, these are the goals that I want to accomplish. These are the promises that I've made to myself. This is where I want to be. And this is what I know that I cannot say yes to in order to accomplish these goals. And sometimes just writing it down, seeing it, saying it to ourselves will remind us.
Yeah. I want to put forth a little bit of a challenge for you guys this week, and that is to say no to something that you would normally say yes to. And maybe it's something that's been gnawing at you that you don't want to do, or that you haven't wanted to do. Either the challenge is saying no to something currently, or looking at your list of responsibilities and the things that you have put yourself in, and maybe see if there's something that you can take off of your plate to relieve yourself of some of the pressure that you might have gotten yourself in. So that's my challenge for you guys this week. And for some of us, that's going to be really difficult. And that's okay, because in the area where we find difficulty, in the area that we find discomfort, is usually our biggest areas of growth. And I know that to be personally true. So we are so happy and we are so thankful that you joined us for this episode of Just One More Cookie. Please remember to subscribe. Please remember to email us at onemorecookiepod@gmail.com and let us know about your challenge. How did it go? How did you say no go? Also, if you have any tips on topics that you want to talk about or stories that you want to share, please connect with us, because we love connection and we love you guys. So until next week, we will see you again on Just One More Cookie.